All right. So another thing that I can think of that fucks a person up, um, this is actually fucks up pretty much every area of a person's life. There's there's a lot of people that think that everything they do and say is normal and universal and stuff, or that it's like, you know, mandatory or something. Um, that's typically people who only have experience with a few cultures or just one culture, or they never left their town and stuff, you know. Um, and they have a tendency to think that their attitudes, like for example, like how much time they spend getting up in the morning and stuff, or you know, how much they sleep or whatever, is like universal. And it's basically a process of, well, one of the ways that this occurs is they tell people about their habits and stuff, and then later on they're hearing the same thing being said back to them because people, you know, we people's brains, they're playback and recording devices. So they often say what they often, you know, regurgitate their experience. And so, but they've forgotten the other, like, they've either forgotten how this process started or they discounted that there's facts that other facts that cover the surface of the matter and stuff. So they basically created an an experience for themselves and stuff that also consists of their internal environment in their mind, where all they know is um, their personal practices, which is likely a shared family practice or cultural practice and stuff. So naturally, so as as a, what that leads to is conflict and stuff. And what it also leads to is the person not realizing that there's other ways to do things and stuff. And sometimes there needs to be other ways to do things. You know, sometimes you need to change your schedule. Sometimes you need to change what you eat. You know, sometimes you need to stop hanging out with that friend that keeps waste that, you know, is that is causing trouble for you and stuff and so on. Um, but you know, but yeah, that mindset and stuff really messes a person up because it's a sign of just a person not willing to examine what's going on in their lives and an unwillingness to acquire the strength to make it all work and to get used to it, to get used to living in a certain way that where they have rate of improvement and where they have um, prospects and they're not dealing with the crazier stressors of the world that aren't really necessary. Um, yeah, like now think about this and stuff. And what's another example? Let's look at the psychology of athletes and stuff. Um, Athletes live in a very, very different world than, say, um, C-suite college professors, like high-ranking attorneys, you know, high-ranking public servants, you know, public officers and stuff, you know, highly respected and trusted people and stuff, doctors and surgeons and stuff. Athletes, they to them, boisterousness, you know, physical activity, impulsivity and stuff, those are considered normal. And so that's almost like their language. When they're in a group, um, any overt calmness either gets registered as not being there or being depressed or being a coward or something. It just sticks out and stuff because the signaling language is to like kind of like jump up and down. Maybe you say a few radical things, use some trigger words and stuff to either get everybody riled up or to offend the other, to trigger, to put to be not say disrespectful per se, but like to make the other team reactionary and stuff. Like um, words that are associated with horrible things that might not be necessarily bad in themselves. Like this is how they get away with it. So, so it's a type of psychic attack or psychological attack. So, that's the language there. So it's like a more combative environment and stuff. They're more criminally oriented. Um, those types. Um, and but like to them, that's normal. Like they're having fun and like they're so amped up on the serotonin, the adrenaline, and everything, the adrenochrome in their blood, that they just don't care. Like they can't care and stuff. Um, to them, that's normal, and they often never see otherwise. Like they can't just come out of a football game or rugby, especially with rugby games and stuff, because rugby is a very violent sport. Um, or come out of a kickbox, like a Muay Boran or Muay Thai kick, not Muay Thai, not a Muay Thai Muay Thai fighting match and stuff, and just discuss the details of brain surgery and stuff, and experimenting with brain injections or whatever. Like they because that's because ideas, the interaction of ideas, is not their language and stuff. Um, first of all, and it's like a foreign concept and stuff. It's very rare that they can do that and stuff. Like there's some college athletes that do this and stuff, but um, it's very rare that they can really force the issue and think at the same level and stuff, and think at the same organization and sensitivity and composure, and with level of depth of inferencing and stuff. Maybe even the same creative problem solving, or original problem solving, that type of thing. Now, what's another example of this? But now, how does this screw them over and stuff? I mean, it becomes a limiting factor, of course. Sports are just sports and stuff. They're an institution for physical development and the priming uh, of military training and stuff like that. Um, it's just like a cultural thing as well. So, especially in the United States, which has a very high interest in sports, and of course, violence too. But yeah, so about violence and stuff. Um, what's the normal thing? Like, I mean, what is considered normal is ending a physical altercation, right? Like the other person has to have the first attack and be the aggressor. They're already slotted as the bad guy and stuff at some level of discrimination and sensitivity. So, um, so then the hero in the narrative ends the fight and stuff. Very rarely is it like a Batman situation where the guy is definitively bad and stuff, and Batman's just busting him and stuff, because Batman is basically like his own law enforcement agency and stuff, and he has his own rules and principles and stuff, and you know he doesn't need permission or clearance or none of that. Doesn't need society's permission. He'll just go and bust you up if you decide to murder, or whatever. There's many reasons why I bust people up. That's just a good fictional example and stuff. Another example, so something that's not exactly, it's not very widespread, but it's there's enough people in it. So it's some if you grew up avoiding women or having negative views of women, sometimes, which can be for religious reasons and stuff, because of what religious scriptures have clearly said about women. For this reason, like I have to restart for a second. there's many reasons why people have found misogyny and stuff, or gender-based frustration, negative gender tension and stuff and so on, to be um, normal and stuff. You know, they get together with like-minded people and stuff, and either people that will repeat what they say and stuff, and it just becomes this culture of like, oh, women are stupid, women are this, women are beneath us, blah blah blah. It's like it's just regardless of how they try to ground it and stuff, it's a bunch of giving cues and utilization for animosity. And why that fucks a person up is because they, and I'm not going to say pardon my French there or pardon my language because the word fuck here is used constructively. There's almost no other way to cut it and stuff like this fucks you up. The reason why it fucks you up is because in human like physiology, evolution, biology, the presence of a, of a good woman sparks humanity in a man. He begins to think about her needs and stuff, her security needs, how she's gonna eat, how, whether she has a good day and stuff, whether somebody is posing a physical danger to her and stuff, making a family with her, like all these subconscious drivers that connects the male psychology with female psychology, and these can also include um, you know, familial drives and stuff, like viewing the sister as sort of like the baby and stuff because of the physical disparity that often exists. The brother, who's sometimes younger, is often taller, um, or more physically powerful and stuff. Um, and so this is like an evolutionary cue to put this men in a psychological mode, this kind of psychological mode and stuff, which I think becomes more present actually in the lack of education. So paradoxically and stuff, when education is poor, familial drives and stuff, and um, other mammalian, simian, um, Neolithic drives actually become stronger and stuff. But they're useful in in how they guide behavior and stuff. Like you learn to talk and act from a good place because you're wired and stuff to form you're still wired to form a unit with other people, even though as a man and stuff, you're the more you masculinize, the more um isolated you can become. Like the more independent you can become and stuff. You know, because your physiological programming is to be a dominance, penetrance, um, you know, conquering force and stuff that resists and takes over and stuff, and um, and is and has like this extra energy and whatnot. It's a gonadic drive, and so which is also augmented by the adrenal um, androgens by an adrenal androgen and stuff. That bit of testosterone um, that mixes with the adrenals and stuff creates like the adrenal gonadic physiology and stuff, which is um, a combative physiology and stuff for survival, winning wars, securing the female and stuff to mate and whatnot, like to pair up and stuff, like or protecting the children and stuff. Like these are all the subconscious drivers. So, and uh, so if you, but like going back to it and stuff, if avoiding not if not being around women or communicating with them, interacting with women and stuff, or avoiding women becomes normal and stuff, you basically just kind of die like on the inside and stuff like a part because part of you is just off, you know. your a lot of your male social intelligence isn't being used. Um, and so you basically become like this emotionally maladjusted, like it creates emotionally maladjusted man and stuff, you know, um, raised like, a lot of like a lot of incarcerated people with some serious charges found guilty and stuff and so on. They 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 hated their mothers and stuff. They couldn't behave for their mom. They couldn't do something for their mom and stuff. They could, you know, as boys, they couldn't see manhood and become it and stuff. Um, and boys can attain some degree of manhood and stuff. There are boys that physically defend others and stuff at the to a comparable threat level that a man can do and stuff. Um, and there are boys that take risks and stuff. A lot of boys are carrying androgen levels similar to adult men. They just pump it out and stuff. Um, because they're maturing quickly. The physiology, psychology will not stand to be the small one and stuff. We try to enlarge and stuff, and it's in our biological programming to do that and stuff, which can be a drawback, right? Like, we could be voracious eaters in a poor household and stuff. Um, and so on, um, and not necessarily work any extra and whatnot, or be so high earning and stuff, because we get so caught up in wanting physical activity and creativity and being sexually driven and stuff. It's actually one of the curses of being a man, that you just kind of like that, um, that you can that many men basically become like gorillas and stuff at home, you know. Um, and sometimes the gorilla would just sit and play and stuff and not do anything serious because you know he's he's he can throw his weight around and stuff. Um, and yeah, so that's another example of how certain preconceptions can mess a person up. Um, and I'm thinking about it like, could this be the same for women and stuff? Like women who avoid men, hate men and stuff, end up messing up their own lives. I mean, it depends and stuff. You know, women don't really get by with certain crimes and stuff. Um, they commit crime and stuff, but it's a different kind of crime. Like it's like a crime, like in principle and stuff. They don't necessarily steal. They don't necessarily assault and stuff, but they know. Sometimes they know how to light a powder keg and stuff. Um, and they can produce criminals and stuff. Uh, with some of their child rearing practices. So, um, basically being a parent that defeats understanding all the time. Um, defeats the understanding capacity of their child all the time, or puts bad ideas in their child's head. Um, so, but many women, I would say most women are not really facetious like that. So, like they just, you know, they're just people to be learned. So basically, like you have to, put the pieces together in your head and see like how much of a woman, what variation of a woman, what type of a person, you kind of put it together. And I think the inability to do that and stuff, um, for both genders can mess them up. Um, so I mean that closes that branch of discussion about how thinking some things are normal can really mess a person up and stuff. Um, I mean, of course, laziness messes a person up. I think I've discussed that. Um, oh, ignoring propensity and stuff. If you ignore your own character and stuff, like you don't look at yourself, um, examine yourself and stuff and say, wow, I got some bad capacities. Like, you know, maybe these large intestines just make me want to eat all the time to no benefit, really. Um, or maybe, or, or that type of thing. If we don't, or maybe this propensity to become lazy because the person has enabled themselves to just sleep and stuff, or just sit and watch TV all the time. You know, maybe maybe those things. Uh, like, it's possible that an ignorance about one's own character can mess their lives up. Um, ignoring the like intangible emotional needs and stuff. Understanding that there are activities you like and stuff, and there are uh, experiences you like, and there's healthy and unhealthy things and stuff, positive and negative things, things that are inimical to the human and stuff, or things that are the opposite, just purely that are very beneficial to human, that you cannot ignore, distinctions you cannot ignore, that you must respect and observe and stuff. Um, there's that and stuff. Um, you know, and, that can tie into not wanting to face the truth. So, like some people believe the facade they put on for others. Like they just been doing it for so long that they think that they're this, paragon like whatever, arguably I can be seen as one of those people sometimes too, because from the way I talk in this channel and stuff, I can be viewed as a very arrogant person, very supercilious person and stuff. Um, I could be viewed as somebody who reads off of an AI script, potentially, or whatever is just bullshitting and stuff. But in actuality, the shit I say is true. Um, I've seen it, I've studied it, you know. Um, but I don't know. Maybe you didn't know. I don't know. Maybe, or you did know. So, um, hmm. Getting carried away with an idea and stuff like my type of person can get carried away with an idea and stuff. Like I can be very memory driven and stuff because I developed a thoracic propensity and stuff. Um, I used to do a lot of cardiovascular activity. I used to extend my rib cage, do rib cage expansions and stuff. I used to do a lot of um, breathing exercises and stuff. Um, I'm not nearly as thoracic anymore and stuff, but those memories are still in me and stuff. So, you know, I can persist with an idea for too long without stopping to say, hey, there's other variations and stuff, and I can, um, you know, that's one type of person that like, so I'm one type of person that can get carried away, and yeah, I mean that can be viewed as impurity, right? So because you're so you're so driven by something that does not abide to a higher quality or level of information. So for so long, I didn't want to read. I didn't want to think. I thought all that shit was a joke. You know, I didn't see it leading anywhere. To me, the world of knowledge, information, ideas, and stuff was so small, and it's just like, okay, go to work, go on dates, whatever. Um, you know, in my like very physical mindset that I found myself in when I was like 19, um, with having done a number of myself. And yeah, and that could be another thing. A person not understanding how vulnerable the biology is can really mess them up, like I said before. Oh, and this is another one. All right, that wasn't it. But um, not having a understanding of some street smart concepts and stuff. Like, for example, street cred or honor and stuff. Street cred is like a variation of honor, right? Um, but like from a universal perspective, the effect of honor is that there's going to be people that respect you to your face and behind your back. And there's going to be people that vouch for you and say, yeah, this person is the real fucking deal. They're a great, this person is a great person, blah, blah, blah. These people like have found a reason to like you and stuff because you worked out how to pay in the respects and stuff a while ago, or you did something out of humility, or you did something noble or honorable. You rectified some problem and stuff. Maybe you went out of your way a lot to do it and stuff. Um, you can have a ton of dignity and stuff, but if you don't do anything with it and stuff, it has no impact and stuff. So what you do to realize that dignity and stuff is honor and stuff. It is the working process of the gain of it, you know? Um, so so not understanding that can really mess a person up and stuff. Like this is the thing about honor though. In societies where everybody's producing honor and stuff, basically you get people that look at things from a perspective that just suits their interpretation. Like they try to find something wrong with what somebody else is doing sometimes, and then they try to check that person or provoke a fight and stuff, or they they initiate a conflict that's not necessary. It's actually becomes like like a theater of stupidity, basically. Um, you know, and then and then like maybe everybody's trying to do something commendable, but there's not enough to go around and stuff. Or you get the people that just want attention and stuff and want to be loved, like not loved, like want to be like the star of the show and stuff. And they're reacting badly and stuff because they're not getting enough attention and stuff. That's why social media actually tends to be an exacerbator for this because you get people that are always trying to like get the car to show it off and stuff and try to fish for compliments, be a people pleaser and stuff. But you know they don't have the fucking substance or the balls and stuff, or the the mental power, the mental capacity, the brains and stuff to to get the thinking right and stuff, or to um have an effective behavior and stuff. They just end up being performative and stuff and being obsessed with performativity. And yeah, being obsessed with performativity can really mess somebody up and stuff because you end up not accomplishing anything, always wondering why you can't do something. No, it's because that person focused on, you know, they didn't try to grind it out and stuff to learn something. You know, sometimes you don't always get stronger and stuff. You just learn and you move better, you know. Um, you make better moves. Um, or you learn some things and stuff. Because sometimes when you're making moves, you're blocking out and you're not necessarily really understanding. Um, you're just kind of rearranging things, manipulating the matter. Uh, um, yeah, or manipulating circumstance, you know. Um, there's a degree of inhibition there. I guess it can be said that chasing money also really messes a person up. Like if you're obsessed with money and stuff, you you don't get to learn much. You basically put yourself in a terrarium lined with mirrors where, everything's just your perceptions and people are just like affirming you and stuff. They're respecting you and stuff because they either want to get over on you and stuff, or um, they're kind of materialistic too. You know, if you're obsessed with like, chasing the millions, the billions and stuff, that, you basically become a habitus, and your habitus is just a small part of you, isn't it? You know, um, like looking back at the story of A Christmas Carol and stuff, Ebenezer Scrooge couldn't freeze because most of Ebenezer Scrooge was dead and stuff. He's like out there in the cold with a blue nose and a blue face and stuff in the book because he's like um he killed himself on the inside, you know, in this fastidious, noble pursuit of doing a legal business of something that was meaningless to civilization. He doesn't actually do something for civilization until he just pays back. Um, he just gives all the gold that he had and stuff, all of his shillings, all of his pounds and stuff, you all away. After so much of the the damage that was done. You know, had he just paced himself, maybe make a little extra for himself so all of his needs are met and stuff, and he just paid a big, he gave away a bigger portion of his profits and stuff, he would have been in a much better place, you know. um, or he could have foregone working and learned something to benefit civilization. You know, you can't. I don't think a person can lose by being like obsessed with this notion of nobility and stuff. Though if everybody tried it and stuff, who's there to help and stuff. Um, so there's that.